Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the PCU podcast series, Let's Engineer. Today, our guest is Leo Gravé from Mecha Solutions. Welcome. Let's just jump right into it. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Mecha Solutions?
No, definitely, Jim. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate your opportunity to talk a little bit about Mecha Solutions. My principal role, I'm the lead solutions architect in Mecha Solutions. We deliver different system integrations for different manufacturing, consumer goods, and other facilities throughout the United States. We had a little bit of background in South America, but we are mainly operating here in the Midwest. We are located in Plainfield, Indiana. We are constantly working with SCADA solutions, and we mostly of our systems are fulfilling with ISA 95, which is one of those new technologies or the new standards that are coming up. We do enjoy what we do quite a lot. We like to be one as known as like the weird guys that try to work with different technologies all the time, so we're not that standard integrator that everybody kind of knock the door, hey, we have this type of PLC. So we like to work with the solutions that deliver great results and solutions
Mhm.
that we can leverage everything that the customer wants, keeping a significant amount of cost, and be very cost beneficial.
Very good. Very good. But going down that line is, so what are some of the challenges that your customers bring to you?
Well, mostly the customers, like, they have all the cool and sexy ideas that they come over. Hey, we want to implement this type of solution. They have an engineer in house that they're trying to build in, and sometimes they think they know exactly what they're working in. It's like those. I like to reference that as the person that knows how to paint, but they still end up hiring like a painter to come into the house. Everybody has to
Yeah.
paint, but is
Mhm.
that kind of challenge that I see a lot of times. But when they reach out to us is usually when they are trying to figure out to implement that system, and they got to a huge wall of challenges, and they don't know how to overcome that. And when we start working with them, is usually, hey, identify most of the requirements they're into, and then if the project is like too far ahead, we need to kind of like revamp it and start specifying all the materials again, or specify all the different devices we're going to use, and lay out the whole architecture. And sometimes that can be very tricky depending on the stage of the
Mhm.
project.
Yeah. So basically, it's putting together a puzzle. So
Yes,
yeah,
that's what
as
we do
far
most
as it
of the time.
goes. And you're working with, I mean, so you're taking legacy equipment sometimes, right? Probably a lot of the time, and then trying to bring it to into their enterprise, or at least trying to solve whatever it may
Mhm.
be. It may be they have a new line they're putting in, right? Or something. What are some of the industries you work in?
Well, I mentioned like well, most of our industries are related to like manufacturing, but we end up being most of it automotive, consumer
Okay.
goods, warehouse. The
Okay.
last few years we've been heavily on automotive, and when I say automotive, I mean like tier one supply, not specifically just like the car makers itself, but it also
Right.
applies for the car makers. It can be
Yeah.
just
Tier one, tier two, tier
yeah,
three.
tier one, tier two, and that's mostly other customers that we have, and also engine builders as well.
Okay. Are you working with robotics at all?
Yes, we do. We work with robots, and I like to say there's not a that many robots that I haven't touched myself. I've touched, like, put my hands on. I've worked with several different brands on throughout my career, and we have a specific ones depending on the type of solution that we're delivering. Some of ones are have a
Mhm.
little bit of a higher end spec. Some of them are like, okay, that's good for the job. That fits the bill. But we do work with several different brands as well.
So with the robotics, and you're working with it, you're programming the robot itself, but also interfacing to the SCADA.
Uh, it depends on a project. That's a good
Okay.
question. Usually they have an interfacer, or I'm going to call like a midpoint guy, which is your controller, and that depending on the what you want to leverage to the SCADA,
Mhm.
it's something that it can be all managed locally and then shoveled into the system. The
Right.
reason I'm saying that is a lot of the controllers do not have like ready in solutions to communicate straight with a device or with a SCADA system. So we have to have a middle guy over there to grab the data and shove it back to the SCADA.
doing some of the interface,
Yes.
side of it. Solutions has a great reputation, so most of your business is pretty much word of mouth, right? It's that it started
Yes.
from your reputation, which is great. But still, when you get in there, you're dealing with the different departments and different people. And how do you navigate that? Like you have the engineer who wants it done, but then you have the IT, and then you have the enterprise group, you have the finance guys. I mean,
That's
how
a
do you
very good
navigate through all
question.
those people?
Yeah, it is a challenge that we see. We like to call them pods. So you have like the IT pod, we have the engineer pod, we have the technical. We like to divide like the technical pod and the management pod because everybody want to solve problems that are unnecessary problems, you know. And then the IT side, for example, comes over with like all these in quote cybersecurities, which is still a concern, but sometimes like how you're gonna have a data from an IO block, right? And then
Right.
how that IO block is going to be like cybersecurity compliance if it doesn't have even an OS
Mhm.
running, you know.
Mhm.
But going back, wrapping up a little bit on your question, usually I like to have a kickoff call to understand like what are the pain points and all these
Mhm.
different like pods and what they have it in or in their experience, so I can at least shovel their ideas what they have and bring them closer and closer. So like sometimes people, oh, we have a PC controller, IT person says that way, but if we're it's not actually a PC, it's a controller. So we're trying to close that gap between the engineering and the IT. And
Right.
and that's where we try to be a very good integrator, where we close that gap between IT and OT, you know. But overall, we put everybody in the meeting. We do that traditional kickoff, see all the pain point, what are the pain points in the project, and then we start bringing them as close as possible, and we start working with them individually in different phases of the project. But
There
at
you go.
the
Yeah.
end, we try to kind of wrap up and everything, do like a customer review and see if like it's compliance with everybody. If the engineer guy's happy, if the IT guys, the manager likes to see all the pretty spreadsheets and the
Mhm.
graphics all on the screen. So we try to wrap up and everything.
Well, if you can make everybody happy, more power to you. Yeah,
Definitely. Yep.
that's always been. I find usually making the engineer happy is the easy. It's the IT guys sometimes that's hard because they're dealing with all these outside. It's what's happened yesterday, right? If they got a cyber attack yesterday, it could close you down. Do you do most of your work on site, or do you do a lot of work like
With
locally
remote.
in your office and then
It
bring
is
in?
a little bit of hybrid, right?
Okay.
Again, comes back to depending on the product, depending on the infrastructure that they have on site. So some customers they want to have everything local, so we try to kind of run everything as we can in our like lab, put it out like a server, and then replicate that in the local, and then eventually we
Mhm.
start like developing that locally. But sometimes when the customer have going back to the cybersecurity thing, they have that structure in place. Is a little easier to work remote as well as giving the proper support. Sometimes they put a new machine in and they're like, hey, well, the machine's not responding properly. We lost communication with this like
Mhm.
gateway or whatever. It
Right.
is easier for us to troubleshoot when it's remote, but we do mostly hybrid.
Yep, that makes sense, and probably get a lot more work done that way too.
Sure.
So, okay, transitioning back into technology. First, I want to talk about the data. Like, what are your approaches to data? Because I mean, it's all over the place. I'm sure you get in and they're all in different silos, and so maybe you could talk a little bit about your methodologies and just approach on bringing the
Well,
data and consolidating.
I like to get a little step back in there because I mean everything's data nowadays. Right, you have a blob
Yeah.
here, you have a blob there. Everything you can put in a spreadsheet. We can put even like our information here right now, pixelized and put in a spreadsheet. It's going to sit in the cloud. I like to approach that again, trying to identify what kind of information. Again, the data translating into information. What kind of information the customer would like to acquire. Because I've seen things that everybody talks about data, but they actually don't know what they're going to do with that data, right? We're collecting, I don't know, like 3.5 gigs of this database that, okay, what are they going to do with that? Just putting a lot of space and putting
Right.
more bandwidth on the network. So we try to identify what kind of information would be ideal for the project or ideal for the customer. Let's say they're trying to acquire some KPIs specific for that machine. They're trying to track, like, they try and come up with a new plan of predictive maintenance. They try to collect specific trends of the machine. So we try to at least filter and gather all these information before actually translating that into like bullet points. Oh, okay, that's going to be the data. Like, oh, we need to
Right.
know what is the voltage that the phase that's running this drive to is coming up
Right.
before narrowing that. And that's the little approach that we have.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, when we talk about data, you have just some of the specifics, right? You have the basics for on the SCADA side, right? You got your trends and you got your alarm points, right? Your, and however the traditional SCADA side of it. And then you have the data on the outside of SCADA, right? You're leveraging that data, bringing it up, and of course, data is coming from all over the place. Like if you're doing recipe management, bringing that down. So, do you tend to do you use their databases first, or do you come in with ideas saying, "Hey, here's basically our receptacles and what we are," or do you leverage what they have, their enterprise?
And if they have, going back to the ISA 95 that I mentioned in the beginning,
Mhm.
we try to incorporate as much as we can and created a unique integration system fitting the Industry 4.0 standards. And goes back to depending on the project, depending on the customer. Like if you got Mr. Joe Mo that has like a facility with like 30 people and they want to just have a little spread, a little system that gathers all the layer their CNC machines, related machines, or like machine tending,
Mhm.
you're probably going to bring up your own system, your
Right.
own like database, and we try to leverage like other cloud services. But when you go to enterprise levels, we have like a multi-million dollar manufacturing that has all the
Mhm.
architecture in place or already have all the structure, it is easy to work what they have already and just complying
Uh,
with their policies.
right, and now you're working more with their even more with their IT group.
Yeah, more of their
So
IT people, yes.
that's always fun. That's
Yeah.
always fun. Well, I mean, I have to ask this one because it's the topic of the hour of the minute is AI.
Oh,
And
AI.
really your experience with it. Where do you see it? I mean, this could be a quite a conversation. But I just want to first your experience with it, and then I'd like to get your views on where you think it's going.
No, like, well, I think like the Terminator is gonna come over and start like shooting us and everything. Instead of just doing it all,
Well,
but
that's why I'm always nice to Alexa and to Siri. I'm always
yeah,
very nice to those
you
two.
never know, collecting data, Um,
Okay.
No, jokes aside, like I see AI being leveraged in a very they are going to be very well receptive of AI, right? And our experience is mostly like with generative prompt AI, which is uh, a lot of like Microsoft Copilot come out with it. Other um, not other brands I would say start kind of involved, but the traditional, like ChatGPT, they always call
Mhm.
these type of AI, the generative prompt that you like the little bot that we have when you go on the website and like typing in a
Mhm.
question. So we trying to integrate that a little bit in a few projects we did in the past. It's not like a full down solution that we try to put it in, but it's actually kind of a custom breed or in-breed development that we're trying to put it out as leverage some of the information that we get out. So instead of like looking at the reports, like say we have I don't know 300,000 alarms, and we like okay, you're gonna put a filter, you're gonna set up the filter for this or that data. Is it you should ask the bot like okay, hey, report from like February 1st or February 2nd, at this time, and boop, we put it out there. So we would like to leverage that a little bit and there's like more of the AI again, the generative prompt AI that we mentioned, which is the most common one everybody use, translating document, not translating documents, sorry, transcripting documents and giving that
Right.
type of information. But I like to mention the AIs that like analyze some trends. So for example, we are collecting specific graphics. We're trying to see
Mhm.
like let's say we have a specific vibration in the machine. We're collecting like a pressure switch, and that pressure switch tends to you know go down a specific amount of time or depending on the process that the machine is doing, kind of like cross-reference that, like, hey, you're losing efficiency here. Hey, there's a possibility of a break here. That's where I think the AI could be leveraged, at least on the SCADA systems. You know,
Okay.
um, and we try to implement that, but I think there is a long way to get to that level.
Yeah. So we still have a little bit to go.
Yes,
This
there's a little
this
way to
that's
go.
yeah.
It just gets
It, this
worse. I'm sorry for talking over it, but it's kind of as you mentioned, like everybody who's want to talk about it, everybody thinks it's cool, but at the end of the day, like when you see what it actually does, it's just data gathering and putting your face filtered. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and again, talking about the data side of it, because I think you're seeing where AI is going, what you can do with it, and just and when we're talking about interactive AI, right, where we're putting into automation, and really the question is, where your customers are, how much will they trust it, right, and then
And you actually got a good point, like about the trust. It's we also have to be compliant with certain policies, especially like the big companies. You have like the informational, not credentials, the confidential information that they have. Like you
right.
have a, I don't know, like aerospace facility that
Mhm.
it has some like trade secrets that needs to be kept that way. So you don't want to like put that in everywhere. You cannot put that literally just put it in a online database that everybody has access to it. So there's all these different strategy that need to be implemented before, or even like policy regulations that needs to be in place before even implementing the AI.
Right, right.
Governance, I think that's the right word to say.
Okay. Okay, so I'll change the subject a little bit is IoT, because IoT was the nothing but the talk, right? From probably 2016 to I mean it's still now to a certain, but um can you tell me a little bit about what you think about IoT and how it fits and where that's going?
Oh yeah, indeed. Well, I like to give a little bit of a brief background of the IoT because everybody thinks like, oh, IoT is like RFID or IoT is like everything that has a little tag. I've mentioned before like sometimes the customers have that mentality or they already know what they're talking, but it is just kind of like ruffling the ideas or they are touching the surface of the topic. So
Mhm.
I like to mention that IoT is it could be implemented with any device that can be like at a small peripheral, or a
Mhm.
small device that can be usually they don't have that internet capabilities and we start leveraging
Right,
it. And that's where we start getting the data. For example, we mentioned a robot, right? Usually a robot doesn't have internet capability, or
right,
leverage that information that they have, but we can enable those functionalities using edge devices or using that is smaller devices to collect that data and bring in make that IoT enable, But
right,
also we have other devices that already IoT enable that it can get all the data that you want and we can see that in our houses, But I
right,
know we
right,
talk mostly manufacturing, but we can see an outlet, an outlet
right.
that you have a
Right,
Wi-Fi
turn on off,
capability
right. Exactly.
or a lamp. So these
Or
are
your meter. I mean, there's so much in the house now. It's
it's
like
a
your
media.
sprinklers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can be very helpful, not necessarily just giving not commodity, the comfort that we're looking for, but as well as we give a completely different perspective of like how deep we can go into it. You mentioned the meter in the house, but now like with the data you're collecting, we can, I know, traffic, like see different trends that we can use, like well, I'm sure a lot of energy companies already do that, like, hey,
Mhm.
we use more in the summer. We tend to use like this amount of a load. Oh, in winter we try to use this amount of load, and over that trace a little, um, bring to you the user level at least identify like, hey, where you can save money. That can be bring
Mhm.
to the manufacturing for sure too.
Yeah, because I see that now. Like I'm on the West Coast, so I'm PG&E out here,
Uh-huh.
and I used to be Southern California, so SCE, but in both places, getting your monthly statement, and in the back it tells you your trend and tells you where you are and what and where you've been, and you get all those little analysis points now. And I could see doing that internally. Another thing with IoT, because one of the things I think, and I think customers still don't quite understand, is that IoT doesn't have to be in the cloud per se. You could have it on your intranet, right? Because the technology can work within your umbrella, within your organization, where you have your own, your own internet, internet just to your local, right? To your local internet under your umbrella. And that's just one thing I want to point out to some of our
No, that's
audience that
good.
this, yeah,
And just not because of IoT, we say internet, it doesn't need to
yeah,
necessarily need to be connected to like everywhere the internet. It can be just
Yep.
have a let's call work capabilities. I think that's the best way I can
Mhm.
describe. As long as we
Right.
can pull out data, connect to a like an IP based system, or an Ethernet system, or even using other industrial protocols, we could be able to leverage that information for sure without accessing the internet.
Okay. Nice. Okay. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I want you to
Bring it
just with
on.
some of your experience. You don't have to use actual customers, but I want you to give me an example of a real challenging situation that you've been in,
Uh-huh.
and kind of go through how you navigated it and how you solved it.
Okay. Well, you want that SCADA specifically, system specifically, this is the
This is yours, so you can answer it anyway. I mean, skate is always good, but you can do however you want.
no, I like to say since we're like the topic and maybe like in SCADA, like industry 4.0 integration. I think the biggest challenge when we are trying to work with multiple customers and in different places, and when I say places, I mean internationally. So I mentioned like a
Okay.
little bit of South America. We have people like in North America, people like from Australia and Europe, and then now they want to have the like everything reside in the cloud, and they think it's just like, oh, just open a browser, and open it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
there's a lot of like data governance that needs to be considered, confidential stuff. So these are challenges that is hard to overcome, especially if you have a lot of people that they see everything kind of, I'm going to mention that. Like popular or the popular view. They see it's easier to access, or it is easier to bring that into works, but it is not. So, I mean, I'm kind of like bouncing back and forth here, but what I'm trying to bring it over is when I work in as a manager in another project, we had a specific customer who would bring it over to us and say like, hey, we want to bring data from Europe, we want to bring data from all these different parts of the continent, but they have to be everything in a confidential in the same environment.
Right.
And I said like, okay,
Mhm.
hey, this is not gonna be that easy. Oh, but we everybody has access to the internet. I say yes, but
Hey,
like,
come on! It's
yeah,
they
but
have
like,
the
oh,
internet. Just
just
bring it in.
just put the machine in and like plug the internet in the cable. Say no, there's a little more. So it was quite interesting to discuss these things because, again, thinking an end user, like you have a laptop, you read a laptop, you plug in the cable, access to Wi-Fi, boom, you have access to Google and everything on a website. So I think that's the perspective they're having, and they didn't understand like how the levels of, again, an ISA 95 could be have to stack up,
Right.
and still get the data governance because I mean I can just put in a machine and bring all the data to the whole internet to see it, but is that something safe to do? Again, the IT would probably grab my neck. It's like, what
Yeah.
are you doing?
It
So
always goes back to IT. Always goes back
guaranteed.
to IT. They stop
And
us from doing everything.
yes, covered everything. And but that was a little of the challenge. Again, it was not a project that ended up going for it, but it was a little bit of the consulting phase where we're still discussing how they want to do, and they were trying to get a little bit of information. But it was a little challenging to like explain to them that they can just not plug a cable. They have all these like step by step that needs to be achieved, until we start seeing something from another place.
Right. Right. And again, you're always dealing with their policies.
Yes.
Bring in. What about bringing in legacy equipment? Because there's stuff out there that there's right now how they start it, they push a button. They stop it, they push a button, and they want to bring that into the fold in automation.
You're open
Yeah.
up a can of worms here, Jim. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's what I
like
do.
I understand. Like a lot of customers have like there is always a customer that they have the machine that is running. Oh, we have this machine that's been running for 57 years. We never have a problem. Can we collect some data there? We like to analyze some KPIs, and they don't want to do any major investments and everything. One like
Yeah, we want the data, but we don't want to spend any money.
everybody, yeah, that's what it is. And I just quoted a project for a customer of mine, and they do like different chemicals, So it's like the whole automation. They're trying to collect all the data from all these different instruments, pressure, high levels, low level, like fan, like roughly 80 devices, just like on the instrumentation level, and they tried to bring in everything. So I made a quote, and they were like, "Oh, but this is too expensive. We're not expecting you to spend that money." So like, we just ask what you want to do. Unfortunately, I mean, we can start like, we do. Do you really need to have 80 sensors connected to the?
And you know, and I think that is, and I find this with my experience too, is, you know, they're starting like this, or sorry, like, you know, you can't see the other, but they're starting wide, and and you know, really, you have to go down that path with them, and then bring it in. But what do you need? Every piece. What do you need? What, you know, what's the critical pieces, right? And getting them to think more critically of, you know, what do you really need to start with, and then add on to it gradually.
Yes, I mean, start adding gallery, or at least have like architecture that we can start building on. You know,
Yeah,
but going
exactly,
back to
exactly.
your the legacy that you mentioned, usually we see it being working out pretty well. We use the edge devices, you know, like a small. Sometimes we try to have a little bit creative. We don't need to use something out of the shelf. You know, we try and create our own little devices that we can read a specific type of data. So let's say there is
Mhm,
only like a Boolean signal, you know, just in a like in it on off, you know, there's a little oscillating signal that coming over, or it needs to be an analog depending on the type of the data. We just
mhm.
bring that like Mecha device we're gonna call, and we're gonna
Okay,
bring that connects to like a database or the customer database, and we can start collecting that. And sometimes, especially for like small mid-sized businesses, it's been working out pretty well. I've seen a lot of trends coming over there, so it doesn't need to be like super expensive. You know, let's say
right.
you wanna have nice graphics of how many cycles your machine is running. You can
Hmm.
just put that little edge device that is like every time the operator press a button, you know, sends a
Hmm.
pulse. That pulse is registered in the database. Now you have a data like how many cycles you're having throughout the day. So little solutions like this seems to be very helpful for a legacy equipment. But now, if you want
So,
to, oh, regardless, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was gonna ask, having the, because when you bring this data in, right, and you know, typically now, how many people are looking at, how many people are, because before it was like, it was the guy just on the, I mean, going way back when, it was the guy at the machine, right? And then they brought it out, and maybe the supervisors were looking at it now. But, you know, so how many people are looking at the data now from your experience?
I'm gonna ask a different question, and I think we're gonna have an answer after
Okay.
that. Like, what the data is? You're talking about like more on the back end, or like when you say what data is going to be on the front end, like
Right.
these
And the
are.
thing is, when when you talk, you know, the data, you know, basically right at the machine, you have that data, right? And then you have the trends and the alarms and the
Yes.
events and things like that, you know, to keep it in in the SCADA world. Yeah, where before those were just looked at by the process guys, right? Now, are you seeing that that data is being looked at, like especially with trends and stuff, is being looked outside the process, or is it still, you think it's still kind of siloed where that data is looked at? I mean, obviously the money is a different story, but
No,
I
no, I
mean,
understand because I asked you that way because there is the data that I'm going to call the back end data, you know, like that
mhm,
I don't know how many logs or how many, you know, different types of like cycle. I'm going to call the raw data, right? That's like a CSV, you know, like a specific database.
yeah,
Matter of fact, sometimes I see more people looking at that kind of data that actually the fancy graphical trains and
yeah,
behind that. And again, going back to the question is because I see a lot of more people that IT looking at those because they're going to be the one leveraging like bringing to I know Microsoft platform, putting like in a Power BI.
right.
Uh,
Right, because you know, BI, I was going
where
to
they
say,
have
because now that it takes, if you put in XML or CSV, you know,
and they
BI
can
could
read
bring it
everything.
in.
So that's the raw data,
Right,
right? And I see a lot of
right.
people using this because they
Hmm.
kind of they're not necessarily consuming the data, but they are using that in somewhere
Uh-huh.
else. But frankly, if I tell like the person that is looking at the screen and the graphics, sometimes like I I've seen like two people or three people. Like they
Yeah,
are basically the one that were driving all the implementation of the project, and they just look at, oh, that's nice. There's a graphic here. Okay, great. Oh, let me export this and put it in my spreadsheet. Oh, no, I'm sorry, in my PowerPoint. And it's
right,
frankly
right.
because there's all that much data, and they okay, what are they gonna do with it? It comes back to the we already discussed. So
Yeah, you just wait. It's the show last night's trend at the 8 o'clock meeting, and then
yeah.
that's it, right? I never look at it again. Uh-huh. Okay, so I think, you know, before we wrap up, I want to ask you just kind of a general question for Mecha Solutions, and you know, where do you see things going? Do you see it, because it's been what kind of changes do you see in the just basic or big?
No, I know we're a little like on top of the hour, but I've seen different players and different trends coming out on the market, especially for I'm gonna call the big brands and the not so new big brands. There's I'm
Right.
saying like
Okay.
a lot of major players, they're very good at hardware, they're very good in they've
Mhm.
been doing this for, I don't know, 30, 40 years in the market. They're very good at controllers. They're very good at all these drives. They're trying to get into like leverage their share of their market share and to bring
Mhm.
all these like SCADA solutions, and they're failing drastically.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when I say that is it's because like the customer they already have their hard implemented. Oh, let's put it's the same ecosystem, right? Everything's gonna work.
Do you think it's because they're just not that flexible because their system's kind of rigid,
It is the
or maybe
like
it's their thinking?
No, is that they try to leverage so much what they have throughout that many
Mhm.
years, so they don't have that innovation leverage that other companies have. So they
Right.
try to use that platform that's been working for 20 years, and they kind of just put like a fancy, wrap on
Right.
that, and they think it's going to
Mhm.
work, but it's not. And then
Yeah.
it creates like a very bad user experience. It creates a very bad integration, you know. So I see a little bit of the trends where, like the past 3 years, a lot of people migrated from these like top market dogs and bring up to smaller or newer systems because they work better. It's not because you are very good in the OT space, like say you're gonna be actually good
Mhm.
in IT space or on the
Yeah.
SCADA space.
Yeah. And I find that they're very cost effective too.
Yes, they
The
can be
newer
very
system.
cost
I mean,
effective.
it's just so yeah. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, Jim. Again, I just like the opportunity. It was nice to talk to you. It was nice
It's great. Well, yeah.
to discuss this. Not everybody that I like to kind of get ins and outs of the SCADA systems. Like she talked about the goods and the bads. So I like to speak a lot sometimes, and it's something I'm passionate about. It. That's where we like to like bring the Mecha Solutions flag and say like, hey, we're the kind of people that we don't need to be playing with the main guys. We don't need to spend thousands of dollars just to make this. We can make something work for you using different people as well.
Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. This has
You're welcome.
been very informative, and so I thank you, and PCView thanks you. So you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon.
Great day. You too. Bye bye, Jim.